If you're stuck soloing with minor pentatonic and you're looking for ways to break out and spice up your sound, trust me, you're not alone. But don't worry, because we're going to fix that for you. Today we're going to break down the secret behind the bluesy rock licks of two British guitar legends, Jimmy Page and Eric Clapton. The concepts we're going to discuss are really simple, but they sound fantastic. And if you're stuck playing the same old licks, these ideas are going to take your ability to solo over rock and blues to an entirely new level. Grab your guitar, crank up a classic British tone, and let's talk about how to get some of that Clapton and Page magic into your playing. Let's do it. I did a video last week talking about how a couple of players from the generation after Page and Clapton, Slash and Angus Young, use what I call the major-minor shift to make their licks sound fresh by changing tonalities from major to minor and vice versa, sometimes in the same lick or phrase. And I had several people ask to do the same kind of breakdown on the playing of Eric Clapton and Jimmy Page. Both of these players had a heavy blues influence. And as I mentioned in the video last week, the sound that most of us associate with the blues is licks that alternate between major and minor tonalities over major or dominant 7 chords. Most of Clapton and Page's vocabularies were based on major and minor pentatonic scales. But if you can mix those scales up and apply the shift at just the right time, you don't need much else to sound amazing. Let's take a quick look at the theory behind why these ideas sound so good that people are still listening to them and analyzing them 50 to 60 years after they were recorded. Trust me, I'll make this fast, but it is stuff you need to know to get the most out of this lesson. Let's do a quick comparison of major and minor pentatonic scales. We're going to look at A minor and A major. Here's pattern 1 of A minor at the 5th fret. We've got the notes A, C, D, E, and G. Those would be the intervals, the root, the minor third, the 4th, the 5th, and the flat 7. That's important to know if we want to sound bluesy over A major or A7. Both of those chords have the A root, C sharp or our major third, E, which is the 5th, and A7 has a G note, which is the flat 7 of A. And we can see that the note that doesn't match the chord that's in this scale is the minor third, or C. And if we hang on that C note over an A major triad, it sounds kind of nasty. But if we hit it and move on, well, it sounds like the blues. How about major pentatonic? Well, here's a little trick that you've got to know if you're going to get the most out of this video. To get major pentatonic, all we have to do is slide our minor pentatonic patterns or licks down 3 frets. Here's the same patterns played 3 frets apart. Minor, major, minor, major. So now we're in the 2nd position instead of the 5th, and we've got the notes A, B, C sharp, E, and F sharp, or the intervals, the root, the 2nd, the major third, the 5th, and the 6th. And because there are no notes that really clash with the chord tones of either A or A7, I think the major pentatonic sounds more melodic than the minor. But it can sound too happy or too bright if we're soloing in a rock and blues setting. And we need a sound sometimes that's more aggressive and dark. That's where the major-minor switch comes in. We can instantly change the tonality of our licks by playing the minor third instead of the major third, and vice versa. It's mainly all about how we use those thirds. Here's an A major triad with the root, the major third, and the 5th. And drop the third down a fret from C sharp to C, and now we've got an A minor triad. And we can do the same thing with our licks by interchanging the major and minor third. Listen to this lick just using A minor pentatonic. Now listen to this. I'm going to play the same lick, but I'm going to bend the minor third up to major or C to C sharp each time I come to it. And what we hear a lot in the playing of both Clapton and Page is the use of both the major and minor third in the same licks. Now, I'm still in A minor pattern 1. I'm going to ascend using the minor third on the G string, but when I get to the C on the high E, I'm going to slide into C sharp before descending again. And when I get to that C on the G string, I'm going to play it and then hammer on to C sharp before descending down to G or the flat 7 to end the lick. Now this is a super common move that you're going to hear over and over if you listen to great blues players. And both Eric and Jimmy were hugely influenced by the blues, although they played their licks through Les Pauls and Marshall Stacks. Okay, I think you've got the picture. I'm kind of rushing through this, but it's something I get into far deeper, along with many other things, in my course Pentatonic Scale Mastery. There's a link in the description below if you want to check that out. Now let's break down some licks, starting with old slow hand himself, Eric Clapton. We've got to start off with one of Eric's best known solos from the live version of Crossroads off the Wheels of Fire record. Crossroads is in the key of A, and starting off over that one chord, Eric plays this lick down in the second position. He starts out by hammering on to E to F sharp, and then alternating from that F sharp to A and back a few times. So F sharp is the 6th and it's going to the root. Remember, we talked about the 6 being really important to the major sound. And then finally he bends the B up to C sharp, which is the major third. Crossroads is a quick change blues, which means we go to the 4 chord in the second measure, and he plays a similar lick there. This entire passage, it's so major it almost sounds like country guitar licks. When it goes back to the 1 chord, Eric shifts up to the 5th position, but keeps it major at first, playing E, F sharp, and A, and then some double stops with A and F sharp, and then A and E. E and F sharp are the 5th and 6th of A, so again that 6th is reinforcing the major sound. He then adds D at the 7th fret of the G string, and then we get a cool major minor shift where he plays the C at fret 5 of the G string but hammers onto the C sharp, and finishes that lick with the A root at fret 7 of the D string. He then goes to minor pentatonic to finish up measure 4, playing D, E, G, A, and C. We move on to the D or 4 chord, and he stays minor, playing D, C, and A, bends the D at the 7th fret of the G string up to E, then plays A and G, bends D up to E again, and slides into the D from the C or the minor third, which works perfectly over that D chord. Now this is a favorite trick of Clapton's. He plays major over the 1 chord, he goes minor over the 4 and 5, stays minor sometimes over that 1, but he'll go back to major when it comes to the 1 again in the turnaround. It's so important not to just know the concepts, but to know where to use those concepts. That takes us to another great lick in Crossroads, the one that ends the solo. When When the song goes to the 5 chord or E in the turnaround, Eric slides into a double stop at the 9th and 8th frets of the G and B string. Then we shift back to the 5th position to play D, C, D, C, A, C. And then we're going to slide into E at the 9th fret of the G string. The song goes to D or the 4 chord, and we're going to shift to major tonality now with F sharp and A at frets 11 and 10 of the G and B strings. And now we're back to the 1 chord, and he plays B, A, F sharp, and A. So that's the 2nd, the root, the 6th, and the root. And we finish with another lick so major, again it almost sounds like country guitar soloing. We're going to play the 5th, the 6th, the root, the 6th, the root, the 2nd, the major 3rd twice, and then back to the root. It's hard to think of any clearer example of what we're talking about in this video. Good stuff. Another killer example we have to look at, Sunshine of Your Love. Over the 1 chord to start the solo, Eric famously quoted the old-timey song Blue Moon. Sunshine is in D, and Eric starts by bending G up into A and also playing the B. Those are the 5th and 6th intervals of D. Then we release the bend back to G, which stays true to Blue Moon's melody, and then we bend it back up to A. Now he does that almost country thing again, bending up into the major 3rd or F sharp. We release that bend and go to the D root, play E and D again, before doing a pedal steel bend with the E bent to F sharp and then the A, that's on the G and B strings. And then we go to that D root again. And then he milks that pedal steel bend a few more times and ends on the root. The song shifts to the 4 chord or G7, and he takes things minor with some awesome bending. We bend the G up to A 3 times. Then we're going to shift to the F at the 10th fret, and we're going to bend that G string up like a step and a quarter. It doesn't quite get to G sharp. Then we're going to release that bend and bend up to G. Then we play F, D, F bent up towards F sharp. So we hint at the major 3rd. We don't quite get there. Then we play B or the 6th, which again hints at major, followed by the D root and the F bent up to G. Here's that whole passage. And over that D chord, the F note and bending up to G, those are the minor 3rd and the 4th of D, but it's the flat 7 and the root of the G chord, which is what we're playing over. So he shifted to D minor pentatonic, but making sure that he highlights the notes which outline that G7 chord. That's a lesson in itself. Let's talk Jimmy Page now. And we're going to look at an example from a classic Led Zeppelin tune as a broad concept that illustrates how we can use these ideas to cover the entire fretboard. Let's dig into the song Heartbreaker. So after some sort of a cappella soloing, the band has come back in at about 3:07 over basically a riff that's based around A7. Jimmy plays this diagonal pattern starting down in the second position with A, C, C sharp, so both the major and minor thirds, and then E, F sharp, and A. And then shifts up to the fifth position and repeats the lick, sliding into the A at the 10th fret of the B string. And so now we're in basically A minor pentatonic position 2. And there's some awesome bluesy Albert King, Stevie Ray Vaughan bends that we can get into here. And if we slide into that A at the 10th position, we're in an area of the fretboard that is just full of all kinds of major and minor gold. Now this is super important. In any of our 5 pentatonic positions, we can play both major and minor pentatonic. You've just got to know your patterns. Down at the 5th position, for instance, we're all familiar with A minor pattern 1, but A major pattern 1 is right there also. And if we know them well enough, we can start to blend them together. Here, I'm going to ascend major and then descend minor. Check this out. It's a cool sound. We can also blend those two scales together by adding the major third into the minor pentatonic. Here, I'm just going to add C sharp or the major third into A minor, and we get a sound that sounds like this. Now, if we go back to the A at the 10th fret of the B string, that's home base for a pattern known as the BB box, because it was one of the favorite patterns of B.B. King. And at that 10th fret area, we've got patterns 3 of A major pentatonic and pattern 3 of A minor pentatonic. On the G, B, and E strings, the BB box works because we can easily play minor ideas. And then just as easily, a major idea. And Jimmy Page does a bunch of these type of ideas in Heartbreaker. We can do another major minor shift with our 3 fret rule by playing this major pedal steel bend at the 12th fret, bending B to C sharp and then playing the E. And doing the same bend at the 15th fret, it becomes minor with the notes E and G. So there's some more great bluesy stuff that we can play with A minor pentatonic pattern 4. And then at the 14th position, well, we've got A major pentatonic we can switch to. And then we can shift up 3 frets and we're back at A minor pentatonic pattern 1. Let me play moving up the entire neck, starting off with that Heartbreaker lick and then moving through the various concepts we just discussed over backing track. And I'll put up some graphics to point out, and I know you'll hear when I shift from major to minor. This is what I've learned from Jimmy Page. This is awesome foundational stuff. If you want to play classic rock, blues rock, or just inject some bluesy soul into whatever kind of music you play. Now people can say Page was sloppy, or what's the deal with Clapton, man, he's overrated. But these guys created a rock vocabulary and they laid the foundation for what came after them. All of these licks and concepts still are and always will be legit. If you want to learn more about the major minor shift, check out this video. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Have fun playing that guitar. I'll see you next week.